She said that seconds after she closed her eyes, she felt a ghostly presence in the room. It was Terabasa.
Number 10. The Red Barn. How much stock do you place in dreams? Back in 1827, English couple Maria Martin and William Corder were planning on eloping in Ipswich and had arranged to meet at a local landmark known as the Red Barn. Martin's family later received letters from Corder claiming that they were happily married.
Don't be afraid, Maria. You shall be a bride of death.
But then, Martin's stepmother began having troubling dreams that Maria had been murdered. She instructed her husband to dig in the Red Barn's grain storage bins, where he found his daughter's body.
I didn't do it, I swear I didn't do it. William Corder, I arrest you for the murder of Maria Martin. Come.
Corder was publicly executed.
When he was executed at Bury St Edmunds, it was a national holiday with thousands of people coming.
While the paranormal element received much attention, there may be a mundane explanation. There were rumors that Maria's stepmother was having an affair with Corder before he ran off and helped plan the murder. Number 9. Leading police to a body. When 6-year-old Australian girl Kaisha Abrams went missing in 2010, Cheryl Carol Lagerway believed that she had the answers. The Aboriginal elder had a dream about Kaisha and claimed that her body would be found in a nature preserve near Sydney. She and a friend traveled to the location and did indeed find a body, just not that of young Kaisha.
Well, I did think it was Kaisha, but it turned out that it wasn't to be. And it was even more sad for the person, the relatives of the person that they did locate.
Instead, they discovered another homicide victim. The body is thought to be that of missing woman Christy McDougall, and 2 people were charged in her death.
You can't imagine anybody doing that to anybody, and we're still really trying to come to terms with it.
As for Kaisha Abrams, it was sadly discovered that she had been killed by her mother, who was sentenced to a maximum term of 22 years in prison.
The arrest finally came when Abrahams and partner Robert Smith unknowingly led police to the grave by going back there on the 1-year anniversary of her death.
Number 8. Mary Jane Reid and Stanley Skridla. On the evening of June 24, 1948, young Navy veteran Stanley Skridla and telephone operator Mary Jane Reid went out for a date in Oregon, Illinois. They were last seen at a local tavern around 11:30 p.m. before heading out to a local lover's lane. Their bodies were later found in separate locations. Leading suspects included Mary Jane's former beaux, but the case was never solved.
There are still few answers in the 1948 cold case in Ogle County of the murders of Mary Jane Reid and Stanley Skridla.
However, some believe that Mary Jane's ghost haunts the tavern in which they were last seen. Shortly after buying the building, the new owner started getting odd sensations. Some employees refused to work night shifts and reported objects moving on their own. Is it possible that Mary Jane is still trying to get her case solved? Number 7. Ghosts and a mass grave. Every Thanksgiving, the grandfather of twin brothers Bill and Frank Watson told them the same ghost story. Back in 1909, a man was walking home in Malvern, Pennsylvania, when he saw a pair of dancing ghosts at Duffy's Cut, a stretch of railroad tracks in the woods. The man believed that they were among 57 Irish railroad workers who supposedly died from a cholera outbreak.
So is disease the real culprit behind these deaths? Some believe that story just doesn't add up.
In 2002, the Watson brothers started digging in the area of Duffy's Cut and found a mass grave. Divots on the skull suggested that they were clunked on the heads.
All of the individuals that we excavated have blunt force trauma or actually bullet-based trauma. One of the skulls shows a very distinct hole.
The motivation behind the possible slayings remains unknown.
Railroad officials covered up the killings to protect their efforts to recruit more cheap labor.
Number 6. The Devil Made Me Do It case. You may be familiar with this case from the third Conjuring movie. On February 16, 1981, Connecticut man Arnie Cheyenne Johnson stabbed his landlord, Alan Bono, to death. Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren claimed that Johnson was possessed by a demon when he committed the killing. Johnson pleaded innocent on the grounds of demonic possession.
Look, I don't think he should get the death sentence either. But I am not going before a grand jury and saying he was possessed by demons.
Making this the first case in United States history in which such a defense had been tried. The case earned national attention owing to the bizarre defense. Johnson was found guilty of first-degree manslaughter and sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison. Number 5. The Ghost of Anne Walker. In 1735, author Arthur L. Hayward published a book called Lives of the Most Remarkable Criminals. The following account of an apparition in Durham, England comes from his book. One night, the bloody spirit of housekeeper Anne Walker appeared to Miller James Graham and recounted her story. She had gotten pregnant by a relation of hers, Mr. Walker, who killed her with an accomplice named Mark Sharp. Graham went to the Justice of the Peace and had Walker's death investigated. The body was where the ghost claimed it would be, as were the belongings of Mark Sharp. Both Sharp and Walker were found guilty of the crime and sentenced to death. Number 4. Analise Michelle. The story of Analise Michelle is quite famous, having been adapted into several movies, including the 2005 horror film The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Michelle was diagnosed with epileptic psychosis and depression as a teen and suffered years of mental anguish.
This is a rare development, to be sure, but one that I have witnessed numerous times.
You mean that Emily was both epileptic and psychotic?
Yes.
When medication failed to help, her family suspected that she was possessed by a demon and subjected her to 67 exorcisms.
Don't ask it any questions or pay any attention to what it says.
It?
We won't be dealing with Emily tonight.
She subsequently died of malnutrition at 23 years old. Following an investigation, her parents and the 2 priests that conducted the exorcisms were charged with negligent homicide. They were all found guilty of Michelle's death and given suspended sentences.
You are guilty, Father Moore. And you are free to go. This court is dismissed.
All rise.
It's often seen as a tragic case where mental illness was misdiagnosed in favor of supernatural interpretation. Number 3. Terabasa Speaks Through Another. Chicago resident Terabasa was found dead in her apartment on the night of February 21, 1977. Her body was discovered when the fire department was called to deal with a blaze, and it's believed that the perpetrator set the fire to cover up their crime.
Initially, the apartment seemed unoccupied, but soon the firemen made a grim discovery.
Jack, we got a body.
It seemingly worked, as the trail quickly went cold. A few months later, Basa's co-worker, Remibius Remy Chua, helped crack the case. According to Remy's husband, Remy woke from a nap in a trance, spoke in a different voice, claimed to be Teresita, and told him that her killer was another co-worker named Alan Showery.
He said the first session only lasted about 30 minutes, and then at the end his wife woke up. He asked her if she knew what happened. She said she didn't.
Following a homicide investigation, it was proven that Showery did indeed commit the crime, and he was sentenced to 14 years in prison.
To this day, I'm not quite sure if Teresita came back. It's one of those bizarre incidents that you don't know is true or not true.
Number 2. The Greenbrier Ghost. In 1897, Elva Zona Hester Shue supposedly died of natural causes in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. The official story was that Shue died in childbirth, but her mother wasn't so sure.
Please don't leave me. Help her! Help her, please! What's happening?
She can't breathe.
Please,
No,
please.
no.
Just breathe, love, breathe.
Mary Jane Hester claimed that her daughter's ghost visited her in the night and told her that her husband, blacksmith Erasmus Shue, was the true culprit.
She said he had choked her, crushing her windpipe and breaking the top vertebrae in her neck.
Hester approached a local prosecutor, and he had Shue's body exhumed. Following an autopsy, it was found that Shue had been strangled and that her neck was broken, which thoroughly debunked the childbirth story. Shu's husband was later found guilty of her death and sentenced to life in prison.
He died of an unknown epidemic that went through the prison population in March 1900 and was buried in an unmarked grave.
Number 1. The Hammersmith Ghost Case. Locals in the Hammersmith area of London became terrified after a spate of ghost sightings in the winter of 1803. The Hammersmith ghost was said to be tall, terrifying, and clad in white. The stories got so out of hand that armed citizens began patrolling the area. One night, Francis Smith, who was out on patrol, encountered bricklayer Thomas Millwood, who was dressed in white, and mistook him for the ghost. Armed with a shotgun, Smith shot and killed Millwood. Charged with homicide, he was eventually sentenced to 1 year's hard labor. Following the trial, shoemaker John Graham came forward and admitted to being the real Hammersmith ghost. He had been dressing in a white sheet to scare his apprentice.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.